Something is shifting in the silver market right now, and it is not showing up in the headlines the way it should be. Not because the data isn't there. The data is very much there. But because the story is spread across multiple industries, multiple countries, and multiple economic trends that most financial commentators are not connecting into a single coherent picture. When you connect them, when you lay out what is changing in silver demand from every direction simultaneously, you end up looking at a market that is quietly being transformed in ways that the current price does not come close to reflecting. That gap between what is happening in the real world and what the price is saying is exactly where the most interesting investment opportunities live. So let's connect the dots, because by the end of this video, you are going to see silver demand in a way that most people simply have not taken the time to understand. If this is your first time here, subscribe right now and give this video a like. The kind of deep dive commodity analysis we do on this channel takes real work to put together, and your engagement is what makes it possible to keep doing it. Now let's get into it. To understand what is changing in silver demand, you first need a baseline. You need to understand what silver demand looked like in the relatively recent past and why it looked that way. For much of the late 20th century, silver demand was dominated by photography. Silver halide crystals were the chemistry that made photographic film work, and at the peak of the photography era, the photographic industry was consuming hundreds of millions of ounces of silver per year. When digital cameras arrived and film photography collapsed, silver demand took a dramatic hit. The bears on silver argued that photography's disappearance proved that silver's industrial role was permanently diminished. They pointed to that collapse as evidence that silver was just a relic, a metal whose best days were behind it. That argument made a certain surface-level sense in the early 2000s. What those bears missed, completely missed, was that photography's exit from silver demand was not the end of silver's industrial story. It was a gap before the next chapter. And the next chapter turned out to be not one industry replacing photography, but an entire wave of industries arriving at roughly the same time, each with its own independent demand driver, each growing at a pace that dwarfs what photography ever consumed. The question for right now, in the current moment, is how that wave of demand is changing. Not just that it exists, but specifically what is shifting within it, what is accelerating, what is emerging that wasn't visible even a few years ago. Because that is where the real insight is. Let's start with solar, because solar is the demand story that most people who follow silver are at least partially aware of, but very few have internalized at the scale it actually represents. Global solar panel installation has been growing at a pace that consistently outperforms even the most optimistic projections made just a few years earlier. The International Energy Agency, which is not known for being particularly bullish in its estimates, has repeatedly had to revise its solar capacity forecasts upward because the real-world numbers kept coming in higher than the models predicted. What does this mean for silver? Each solar panel requires a meaningful amount of silver in its photovoltaic cells. Silver paste is applied to the silicon